What's going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video, and today I'm looking at the worst fixtures, or the opening fixtures for FPL teams, looking from game week 1 to 5, identifying which teams have got the worst fixtures and which players we should maybe avoid, as well as taking a look at 3 key picks and maybe some that we might want to put in our team regardless, although we should consider further on into the season. So if you've not already subscribed, make sure you do. There's lots of FPL content on this channel already and coming up in the next few weeks, and give the video a like if you enjoy it. Otherwise, let's jump straight into it. So we start with Norwich, and I think newly promoted teams, one thing they really need is to start off well. And it's going to be a struggle for Norwich. Now, if you look at the Championship last year, they were massive goal scorers. They scored 93 goals in total between them, which was absolutely huge. In terms of goal conceded, not so great, but definitely an attacking team versus maybe Sheffield United are a bit more of a defensive unit. So opening fixtures are tough as they come. Liverpool away to start the season doesn't get any worse than maybe Man City away. And they also have Chelsea at home and Man City at home in the opening 5. And Newcastle at home is the only really good fixture in the opening 5. Obviously, West Ham away, maybe they can get something from that. But ideally, you'd want a much better starting list from this. I mean, to put it this way, even if Liverpool had this opening fixtures with a tough top 6 side away, plus Man City and Chelsea, I'd maybe even reconsider tripling up on them. So for Norwich, it's really, really hard. So I've still picked out 3 players that I think should be considered. Obviously, there's a lot of talk around Pukki. He scored 29 goals, I think it was, last year, which was incredible. And Aarons is an up-and-coming young defender who played a lot last year. Attacking fullback, only 19, so he's probably only going to improve as well. So these are 3 players we looked at. So let's start with Aarons first. The good thing about him, he's only 4.5 million. Again, not probably one that I'd start the season with, but there are a lot of rumours that he's potentially going to be bought by another Premier League side. I've seen rumours of maybe going to somewhere like Crystal Palace. And obviously, he's not the 4 million that Wan-Bissaka started at last year, but for 4.5 in a Crystal Palace team, if he was nailed on and had attacking potential, then he'd pretty much be straight into my team, I think. Outside of the top 6, Crystal Palace are one of the better sides for clean sheet potential. So keep an eye on that. Outside of that, he had 2 goals, 6 assists last year, 31 chances created. And like I said, he's only 19, so you'd expect him to maybe get better. Of course, the attacking returns are probably going to go down slightly because you're playing in the Premier League and it's a tougher league. And clean sheets wise, definitely going to probably fall. I don't think they're going to keep too many clean sheets this season. So for me, Aarons is definitely one to watch. The opening fixtures are way too tough to put him in. But if you can get some attacking returns for 4.5 once the fixtures clear up, then definitely one I'd look at. Pukki, like I've said, massive goal scoring last year. 144 total shots he had, which was joint first, and only 17 of them were outside of the area. So a lot of his shots are from much closer to goal, which is good. And obviously he won the Golden Boot, but also got 9 assists to boot. So that's 38 attacking returns altogether. So if that was in the Premier League season, obviously Championship play a few more games. But that would be an attacking return every week. So there's obviously a lot to see about whether he can convert to the Premier League and keep it up. Obviously, we saw Jimenez do really well with Wolves. I don't think Norwich are going to be as good as Wolves were, but that's still an incredible achievement, 29 goals. So he's one to look at. I don't think I could risk going for him at the start of the season. You've got Aston Villa who've got much better fixtures. Someone like Wesley for 0.5 million less. Yes, maybe he's not got the goal scoring ability from last year as Pukki's got, but he's got the fixtures to do it. So for me, definitely another one to watch. But we'll see how he does. And then Buendia is the one that really interests me. So he's 6 million. He created 91 chances last season, which was 3rd in the Championship. I've spoken to a few Norwich fans on Twitter, so thanks very much for reaching out to me. They're saying he should be fairly nailed, and he comes in cheaper than Vrancic, who was 6.5 million. Hopefully I've pronounced that right. And a lot of the fans that spoke to me don't think he's even nailed on necessarily because there's so much competition. So Buendia, 8 goals, 12 assists last year. He is 6 million. With the way Fantasy Premier League have done the prices this year, they haven't really put anyone that's going to maybe massively outscore their price tag from the start. Obviously 6 million, he could definitely do that with 20 attacking returns, but we're going to have to wait and see if he can convert that and make the step up to the Premier League. So I think Norwich have got some really exciting options. There's just no way I can go with them with these fixtures. So Wolves may be a little bit controversial to put in here, but I do think the fixtures are tough. Outside of the top 6, they play Leicester and Everton. You'd expect both of those teams to be right up there come the end of the season. They play both of them away, and then Man United and Chelsea at home in the opening 5. So I don't really like Wolves' fixtures at all, but that doesn't mean we should avoid their players completely. So Dendoncker, only 4.5 million. Yes, he didn't start the season last year, but I mentioned him in my 5 million midfield video. And he looks a really great option for 4.5 million. To be honest, I would go as far as to say he's nailed in my team right now because he's so cheap and probably going to play. So we'll have to see in pre-season whether they keep the same formation. It was really the switch to 3-5-2 that made him viable and he started. But versus similar priced options, he looks like the best bet as it currently stands. So he's in my team regardless of fixtures because you need those cheap enablers in there. With Jimenez and Jota, you don't need me really to tell you how well they did last year. Jimenez for the whole season. Jota took a little bit of time to get going. But when they made that switch to 3-5-2, he was much better. He partnered Jimenez up front and really performed well. So I looked at the fixtures from when that switch to 3-5-2 was made and when Jota came back from a slight injury that he had. And until the end of the season, they actually had exactly the same expected goals, 5.49 for those fixtures. And the expected assists slightly higher for Jota, but hardly anything in it. It was 2.49 versus 2.31. Jimenez does shoot more in the box, but he had less big chances. So Jota actually had the better chances for those last few game weeks. So it's very hard, I think, at this point. If you're going to pick one, even with those fixtures, I think it's tough to go for Jimenez if they stick to that formation. Jota just looked like he really found his feet. He was the one that all the hype happened for at the start of last season, and he really followed through on it basically by the end of the season. So I would probably save $1 million if you're going to go for one of them from the start. If Jimenez looks brilliant and Jota, is starting off slow again, then maybe make that switch or find the money to make the switch on wildcard or something like that. But for me, not completely avoids, like I say, Dendoncker in my team, and out of the other two, I think I'd prefer Jota out of those two. But fixtures are definitely tough. So Burnley may be a little bit like Wolves, not necessarily players that you want to avoid just because of the fixtures, but they are pretty tough. Obviously, they wouldn't be in this video otherwise. So they start off with Southampton at home, which is pretty good, but then Arsenal away and Liverpool at home is not ideal, with Wolves away smack bang in the middle. So that's a pretty tough opening for. Brighton away could be okay in the fifth, but otherwise it's pretty horrible opening set and fixtures in general. That being said, you might not want to avoid them completely, especially goalkeeper-wise. Pope is definitely someone I've got my eye on. And generally, whichever keeper is number one for Burnley should do well this year. If it's Pope or Heaton, even better. Not quite sure Hart is as good as those two, but it's looking like it could be Pope with Heaton maybe going to Villa. So to give you an idea of how good they are, last year they got 8 clean sheets, same as Man United. It wasn't great when it comes to Burnley, but they were in Europe, which I think did affect them. Whereas the previous 2 seasons to that, in 2017-18 they got 12 clean sheets, which is really good. And 2016-17 they got 10 points. So the reason I bring, or 10 clean sheets, the reason I bring Pope up is because in 2017-18 when he covered for Heaton had a pretty bad injury, he got 152 points, which is pretty incredible. And I don't think Burnley have necessarily got worse defensively. I just think Europe probably didn't help them with a smaller squad. And they didn't really have a set keeper last year, whereas this year you'd expect them to go in with a number one in mind, and that's the number one for the season, barring injuries. We'll have to see over pre-season. But to give you an idea of how good 152 is, if he got that this year, or the year just gone, 2018-19, he would have been the 4th best keeper overall, only 24 points off Alisson, who got 21 clean sheets and is 6 million this year. So it just goes to show you that you don't necessarily need clean sheets as a keeper. The 4.5s always show their value because they get save points as well. And the way Burnley set up, they let a lot of long shots come in, which is obviously a little bit easier to save. Obviously, if it's constant shots in the box, that's a bit trickier. So Burnley keepers are usually something that a lot of us go for. And if you wanted to rotate, if Heaton does move to Villa, they rotate pretty well. So after the first few fixtures for Burnley, they also get a lot better as well. So definitely something to consider. And I think even in the tougher games, there's potential for clean sheets and if not, save points. So I really like Pope. And right now, if he's number one, he's being lined up for my number one keeper in my FPL team. Otherwise, you've got Dwight McNeil. Again, 6 million. It's a bit like the Norwich players. I'm not sure I'd go straight in for a 6 million midfielder. There's just, there's potential there, but is there much more? I'm not sure. I had a look from Gameweek 19 to 38. That's when he generally played good minutes in most games. There was the odd kind of sub appearance, but he mostly played pretty good minutes. He only had 12 shots in the box over those game weeks, and his expected goals was only 0.97. So for goal scoring threat, it's not really there for him just yet. Again, a bit like Aaron's, he is only 19, so you'd expect him to improve. His expected assist was 2.17, which is okay. If you look at the eye test, I kind of watched him a couple of times from Burnley. He got into some good positions, could take defenders on, and obviously cause a little bit of panic within defences. But I don't know if the quality's just there just yet. But there's a lot of hope around him for Burnley. So we'll have to see how he starts off the season. If he can get some good points with tough fixtures, who knows what he can do in the easier ones. And then Ashley Barnes is a really interesting one. Now, we've got to watch the forward line for Burnley because Jay Rodriguez has just come in. They've got Chris Wood as well, who's just scored in their opening friendly. But Ashley Barnes was pretty incredible last year. So He was in and out of the team until game week 15. So I looked at the stats from game week 15 to 38 and compared him to other strikers. So his expected goals was 8.66. So to give you a good idea of how good that was, that's only less than Aubameyang, Salah, Mane and Vardy, and was ahead of Aguero, Sterling and Jimenez over that same period. In that same period, he was second for the highest amount of big chances, and he got 12 goals, 3 assists. So if he starts the season for 6.5, that could be a really good price regardless of fixtures, because he does get a lot of good chances. That's 24 games, 15 returns, which is decent. And he's only owned at the time of recording this by about 1% of all FPL managers. So yes, fixtures are tough, but he's got a good chance to outscore the other 6.5. So I quite like Burnley options, and I might even start the season with 1 or 2. So Newcastle are last on the list. Opening fixtures are not the greatest. Tottenham away and Liverpool away in the opening 5, and Arsenal at home to start. So 3 top 6 sides in the first 5 games. Although they do have Norwich away and Watford at home, so if you were looking at just the first 4, they may be okay. The problem with Newcastle is who the hell do you buy? Rafa's gone, which is a big problem. Mike Ashley is still there. Fans are not happy at all. Rafa is a really, really good manager, let's not forget that, and they were really good defensively last year. Are they going to carry that on? I'm not so sure. They've lost Perez, Rondon's gone as well, that's all their goal scoring threat gone. They look in trouble to me. Now, there's nothing to say that they won't stay up and they won't do well. Steve Bruce is coming in, maybe he'll do okay. But he's not really a manager that inspires confidence, and the fans aren't going to like it either. And to be fair to Newcastle fans, I don't think they really necessarily go for the team, but they're not going to be happy at the end of matches. I expect there to be booing directed at Mike Ashley. And whether or not it's directed at the team or not, that's got to have some effect on the players here in that game, game after game. So let's see what happens there. But it's not really looking good. And to be honest with you, because I've done 3 players for the other teams who I generally think are options, I'm not so sure Almiron or Dubravka are. For expected goals conceded last year, they got around the same as Man United, Spurs and Wolves. So they were actually really good defensively. So Matt Ritchie does interest me because he's gone from a midfielder to a defender. There's obviously a chance that he plays further forward. He's generally on free kicks and penalties as well. And I saw a lot of people talking about Matt Ritchie at the start of the season, saying if he was a defender, he would have got between 140 to 150 points last year. So that would have put him in the top 10, which is why he's been priced at 5.5 million. So I'm not ruling him out completely. When their fixtures turn for Newcastle, I might consider him. I mean, an FPL dream is to have a defender that takes penalties. So let's not completely write Matt Ritchie off, even if we've written off Newcastle. Otherwise, like I say, I've kind of just put Almiron and Dubravka in because I had to pick 2 other players. Almiron from game week 26 to 35, he played 10 games, 13 chances created, 19 shots, was okay, but was beaten by the likes of Redmond, Tielemans, Deulofeu. So he's got potential there. I know Newcastle fans were quite expecting of what he might do, and maybe starting the season he'll do better. Full pre-season under his belt and then off into a new season. But there's just so many concerns around Newcastle. There's just no way I'm going to plump with 6 million with those fixtures to start with. But he could do okay later on in the season. And Dubravka 131 points, but he's 5 million now. He's a keeper that should definitely be 4.5. And if, like I said, one of the Burnley keepers starts the season as number 1, Pope or Heaton, whoever it might be, even Hart to a certain extent, then they've got to be looking at better value than Dubravka at 5 million. So Newcastle for me right now, a complete write-off, I think. Fixture's just not good enough. Club just looks in a bit of bother. And Matt Ritchie, yes, I like penalty-taking defenders, but for 5.5 million, I'm going to have to see a bit more. So Newcastle, definitely not for me. So that's it for this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it and found it useful in some way. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up. That really helps out and I really do appreciate it. Subscribe if you're new around here. Hit that notification bell so you know when all the new videos and live streams are happening straight away. And leave me a comment below. Are these kind of teams that you're not looking at going for? Are there any players that I've mentioned that you're going to put in regardless of fixtures? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section. Otherwise, I'll leave it there. Like, comment, share, subscribe, all of that good stuff. And I'll catch you soon. Cheers.